Seal the deal. 49 internet cafes across the state raided and shut down.
Using the word charity to cover a scheme is not only wrong, but it's callous and it's despicable.
And how it's hurt the people who serve to protect our country.
This place is pretty important because, I mean, without this, I mean, I'm back out on the streets.
Hello, everyone. Since 5 o'clock, we are gathering new information about the impact this massive racketeering and money laundering scheme has had on thousands of people across the state.
Here's what we know right now. 3 people from Jacksonville accused in the scheme did not receive bond today at a hearing in Seminole County. FOP President Nelson Cuba and Vice President Robbie Freitas and attorney Kelly Mathis remained locked up.
Plus, Governor Scott says he will not name a new lieutenant governor until after the legislative session. As we mentioned earlier, Jennifer Carroll resigned because of her connections with Allied veterans. Now, we have Alicia Booth in Arlington, where she spoke to some upset veterans at the Allied Veterans Center.
And we have Whitney Ray in Tallahassee looking at the future of internet cafes. But first, we'll start with Vic Michelucci, who has been gathering information about this investigation. Vic?
Rob, this investigation is huge. It took several years and about 500 local, state, and federal law enforcement officers. Yesterday, they swept through the state, making dozens of arrests and seizing tens of millions of dollars.
These gambling centers were purportedly operated for charitable purposes. But our investigation suggests the premise of charity is a lie. And it's a lie to our dedicated veterans who have protected our country because little money has made it to the charities.
Investigators don't mince words about the group at the center of their investigation, saying this is one of the biggest fraud schemes in recent history. They tell us Allied Veterans of the World had a vast network of investors and side companies, all in hopes of illegally profiting while posing as a charity to help our veterans. Police raided and shut down 49 internet gaming centers across the state in 23 different counties. They say they obtained 57 arrest warrants and 53 search warrants, with 49 people in custody right now. Agents also seized 44 different vehicles and vessels, including high-end sports cars and a yacht. And they tell us they froze 260 different bank accounts. Investigators say so far they've seized $64.7 million. Detectives from several different law enforcement agencies say they found out that Allied veterans netted some $300 million, but only gave about 2% to charity. So that comes out to around $6 million. That's against the law for a company that claims to be a 501c3 nonprofit. Agents say dozens of people played a part in the illegal gambling scheme. But Jacksonville residents Jerry Bass and Kelly Mathis were at the center.
Our investigation suggests he profited at least $6 million from the gambling venture, and he appears to be the commonality of those that have been arrested.
Among others arrested, 2 Jacksonville sheriff's officers, local Fraternal Order of Police President Nelson Cuba and Vice President Robbie Freitas. Jacksonville sheriff says he's been looking into his officers' alleged misconduct for some time now.
Nobody's above the law. If we get evidence, we go after it. We always have. And nobody gets a pass.
Investigators say FOP leaders Nelson Cuba and Robbie Freitas received at least $500,000 for their part in the scheme over the last 18 months. Agents say this is just the tip of the iceberg, and we can all expect a lot more to come, and it's likely there will be even more arrests in the future. Rob and Jen.
Thank you, Vic. Well, many local veterans we spoke to say their future is bleak.
In fact, we uncovered a promotional video from the nonprofit. Here's just one of the promises Allied veterans said it fulfills.
Since those early, humble beginnings, Allied Veterans of the World has evolved into one of Florida's most important veterans support organizations. Today, Allied Veterans not only helps thousands of veterans in need, but also works to serve people and improve communities across the state.
Channel 4's Alicia Booth spent the day at this local veterans center in Arlington, a place almost completely funded by Allied Veterans of the World. Alicia joins us now live to explain how this scandal impacts the future of veterans at that center. Alicia?
Well, Jen, this place has only been open for about a year, and you're right, it exists solely because of funding from the Allied Veterans of the World. Now, the people who work here tell me that they have been very hands-off with the operation of this center. But the people who live here say they are very afraid they are going to become casualties of this massive scandal.
So this will be
25-year-old Navy veteran Tony Santonzi is excited to get a look at his new room. It's his first day at the Allied Veterans Center, his first day not having to sleep on the street.
The worst part was finding a safe and dry place, at least, to sleep at night. And other than that, I mean, some nights you don't get any sleep at all.
But a lot of people around here will be losing sleep tonight. The Allied Veterans of the World provides about 99% of the funding that keeps this place open. Without the $50,000 a month the group provides for the operating budget, the doors will close in June. There are 27 people who call this place home right now. Some are women, some have PTSD, others have traumatic brain injury. But what they all have in common is that they're here because they have no place else to go. Retired Colonel Len Loving runs the Vet Center, and the thought of turning its residents back into the streets is hard for even a stoic Marine to talk about.
What would be so disappointing to me is the setback that it's going to give these people. It's just a shame that it's going to go that way.
Well, I might have to drop out of school because having a place to stay takes priority over studying.
Iraq War veteran Joshua Walsh has been using the center's computer lab to help him study for his engineering degree. He's just a few months away from being able to get a place of his own. But now he is facing his worst fear.
I'm going to be back a failure, being a failure again.
And several of the other vets I spoke with here today say they were so close to getting their lives back together. And here you go, another setback. It is going to take someone or something with a lot of money to come in here at the last minute and save the day. And you can bet if that happens, the first thing that will happen, they'll be changing the name of the center. We're live tonight in Arlington. Alicia Booth, Channel 4, the local station.
And thank you, Alicia. Well, there's always a risk when it comes to gambling. And now these recent internet cafe raids are shedding doubt on the future of the sweepstakes business in Florida. Channel 4's Whitney Ray explains the sponsor of a bill to ban new internet cafes will now consider amending his legislation to shut down the businesses altogether.
Sweepstakes scandal. A federal investigation claims Allied Veterans of the World lied to customers, operating internet cafes for profit, not to help soldiers. Tuesday, a massive raid found just 2% of the nearly $300 million the purported nonprofit made was spent on veterans.
The bus shut down 51 internet cafes all over the state, including this location in Tallahassee. 5 miles away at the state capitol, the questions being raised, should they all be shut down?
These are truly the crack cocaine of gambling.
The Florida House answered the question last year, passing a bill by Representative Scott Plakin to ban all internet cafes. But the Senate never took it up.
I'm going to suggest that we move a little faster now on that.
This year, Senator John Thrasher is sponsoring a bill that would ban the expansion of internet cafes. In light of the raid, he's now considering outlawing them all.
Now I believe that the evidence has come out that indicates these things are exactly what we thought they were. They've been corrupted. There's a problem with them. Counties and cities are having problems. Law enforcement people are having problems.
Daniel Russell is a Tallahassee attorney representing gaming interests in Florida. Russell says internet cafes only exist through a loophole in state law.
It really is a policy call from the legislature. What do you want to do with these? We've acknowledged their existence. There's maybe 1,000 operating today.
And for those still in business, increased scrutinies in the future.
They have to go and justify their existence, and I don't think they can do that.
As lawmakers look at how best to regulate the industry. In Tallahassee, Whitney Ray, Channel 4, the local station.
And of course, we're continuing to follow this developing story into the investigation of Allied Veterans of the World.
That's right. A total of 57 people are facing hundreds of racketeering and money laundering charges. That includes 2 sworn officers with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, Nelson Cuba, who's the FOP president, and Robbie Freitas, who's the FOP vice president, and those associated with the Allied Veterans of the World, co-owner Jerry Bass, Secretary Michael Davis, and local attorney Kelly Mathis. Now, plus multiple internet cafe operations.
Coming up at 6 o'clock, we're following the money trail. What we've learned about how much money investigators say Nelson Cuba and Robert Freitas made off of gambling profits. Plus, we visited our former Lieutenant Governor's Clay County home and have local reaction to her resignation. And a look at the impact of those who had been working inside one of those now closed internet cafes. Again, that's all ahead at 6. We're following another big story. History happening right now in the Vatican.
That's right. A new pope has been elected, and it's become a celebration, as you might imagine, across the world. Father Terry Morgan with the Diocese of St. Augustine will join us live to explain what's next for our new pope. That's coming up.
It really has been an amazing couple of days here in terms of our news, but in the skies over Jacksonville, can you see that? Well, that little dot represents a comet. And or Comet, and I'll tell you and have a little comment about that coming up here in about 5 minutes.
Another big story we're following, a bright sign as you see there out of Vatican City. The world celebrated as they watched white smoke billow from a chimney and welcomed newly elected Pope Francis I. Well, Pope Francis is the first non-European pontiff of the modern era.
He was elected by cardinals in what was apparently the 5th round of voting on the 2nd day of the conclave. 76-year-old Jorge Bergoglio revealed himself to the world right there from a balcony at the Vatican. He's from Argentina, by the way. Now, joining us now live is Father Terry Morgan from the Diocese of St. Augustine. Thank you very much, Father, for joining us. I do appreciate it. I know you were with us in the studio watching as history was being made. First of all, what is your reaction to this election?
Surprised, but not surprised. I mean, he's just the right age, I think, to be 10 years with us. I think it was about time for us to get someone from America, from the Americas, North America or South America. He's of Italian extraction, so we have a kind of an Italian Pope, although he certainly is South American. He certainly is wonderful to have someone who has a great pastoral background. We tend to forget, it hasn't been mentioned too much, he's a Jesuit father. He has that background as well, not only in a great mind, but the great commitment to social justice that the Jesuit fathers have.
And do you think that is what, perhaps is why he was in fact selected?
Who's to say what was in the minds of the cardinals? We'll know as his papacy unwinds over the next days, weeks, and years what was in the minds of the cardinals. I think if you interviewed 115 cardinals, you would probably get 115 different answers.
And let's talk a little bit about Pope Francis. He's selected Francis. What's the significance of that name?
Well, obviously, the first thing that came to my mind was St. Francis of Assisi. But remember, we have another Francis who was a Jesuit, St. Francis Xavier, and both of them are significant. St. Francis of Assisi is the one that comes to mind most often, and he's the very romantic saint from the 1100s who inaugurated the Franciscan order, a very simple man who gave up his wealth as a young man and had a vision as a young man, but long before he was in charge of an order, to build up my church. And he took his young companions down to a beat-up church at the bottom of Assisi and started to take brick and mortar and start to build up the church. And of course, God said, no, that's not what I had in mind. I was talking about build up my church, the Catholic Church. So perhaps this is what he had in mind when he chose the name. On the other hand, St. Francis Xavier, who came along 400 years later, was a great Jesuit missionary to the Orient, to India and to China. And perhaps, and who's to say which was the St. Francis that he had in mind? Possibly both.
Do you have an opinion in terms of what might be his first priority or two? Considering the fact that this is very unusual that Pope Benedict XVI retired. First time in 600 years that we've seen something like that, something that the local diocese, for example, will see sort of directly an impact as a result of this election? I
think that we're going to see continuity. Obviously, we saw it in the ceremonies. I think Benedict had in mind a smooth continuity. Remember that we have various categories of as Americans in our mind for what's happening as a pope. He sees himself, his electors see himself, and I see him, I think, as a priest and as a pastor, as the vicar of Christ on earth, and as another pastor. And I think that's what he sees his role as now, and how Christ is calling him to lead not only his flock, the 1.2, 1.3 billion Catholics, but other Christians and the world, to appreciate not only Christ as a Savior, but also God's goodness to the world and what our responsibilities are as people who are called to take care of this world.
Father Terry Morgan from the Diocese of St. Augustine, thank you very much for your insight. We do appreciate your help today.
My pleasure, Jen.
Tracking weather with an hour-by-hour forecast. Channel 4 is the weather authority.
All right, good evening, everyone. I got my binoculars ready for tonight because there is the chance that we'll be able to see a comet. It's not super bright, but it will be out there this evening. That's the little fuzzball that you'll be looking at. But the first thing you want to do is line yourself up by being able to see the moon. It'll be a crescent moon, just like it appears here, maybe a little bit higher in the sky. And that'll happen around 7:45. Look to the left and maybe a little bit lower than the moon. You should see that little fuzzball. Grab your binoculars and you might catch the tail of this comet. It's a very unique name, Pan-STARRS. Rob and Jen, we'll talk more about that coming up here at 6.
All right, thank you, John. Well, despite looming budget threats, a ship will be sailing into Mayport.
Now, when we can see the USS New York and the smiles that it's bringing to local businesses, that story's next. After the threat of budget cuts derailing a deal, Naval Station Mayport says more ships are coming.
The first of 3 ships in the amphibious Ready Group will move from Norfolk to Mayport. The USS New York will arrive by December 1st. It will bring 31 officers and more than 320 sailors and their families to the area. Channel 4's Ashley Mitchum spoke to local businesses about how this arrival will impact them.
That means a great deal for me because we're right outside the military bases. It's definitely a plus, and it's well needed.
Naval Station Mayport tells us we are prepared and ready for the ARG's arrival. We expect USS New York to arrive here at Naval Station Mayport in the last quarter of calendar year 2013, and it will bring more than 2,000 sailors and their families to Mayport area. Business owners along Mayport Road are looking forward to the new faces they'll see around town.
2,000 more people would generate a lot more business, just far as just across the board.
The ships is coming, 2,000 people is help for every business here in the area, in the Mayport, and I'm so happy.
USS Iwo Jima and USS Fort McHenry will follow USS New York's lead. The 2 remaining ships in the amphibious Ready Group are expected to reach Mayport by 2015.
That looks great for not only me as a business, but the community as a whole.
The governor's office says Northeast Florida is 17% economically dependent on the military and defense industry. But this arrival is not only good for the economy, but also our strategic interests. In a statement from Crenshaw, he says, as Congress deals with a very difficult budget decisions, this is promising news for national security and the First Coast. This first phase of the ARG move to Mayport underscores the Navy's commitment to a strategic dispersal of assets, a strategy I have long advocated on Capitol Hill. The 3 ships that are scheduled to relocate eventually would add about $75 million to the economy each year in maintenance and repairs. Ashley Mitchum, Channel 4, the local station.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Rob Sweeting.
And I'm Jennifer Waugh. The news continues with Mary and Tom right after the break.